The morning sun cast long shadows across my backyard as I stood there, coffee mug trembling in my hands, staring at the official notice that had just been hand-delivered to my door. $500 per day. Those numbers seemed to burn themselves into my retinas as I read and reread the municipal fine notice, each glance making my stomach sink deeper into an abyss of disbelief and mounting rage. It all started 18 months ago when my wife Sarah and I decided to fulfill our lifelong dream of installing an in-ground swimming pool. We'd been saving for over a decade, carefully setting aside money from my job as a mechanical engineer and her work as a high school teacher. Our three, Kidzima, 12, Jake, 10, and little Lucy, 7, had been begging for a pool since they could walk. Every summer, we'd watch them press their faces against the chain-link fence, gazing longingly at the neighbor's sparkling blue oasis while we sweated through another scorching July in suburban Phoenix. "This is it, honey," I had told Sarah that crisp October morning, spreading the pool contractor's blueprints across our kitchen table like a treasure map. "Next summer, we'll be the family with the pool. No more driving across town to the overcrowded public pool. No more begging your sister to let us use hers." The process seemed straightforward enough. We'd done our research, obtained what we thought were all the necessary permits, and hired Sunset Pools and Spas Company with stellar reviews and a Better Business Bureau rating. Marcus Webb, their lead contractor, was a smooth-talking man. In his 50s, with sun-weathered hands and an infectious enthusiasm for creating backyard paradises, he assured us that everything would be handled professionally, that his team would navigate all the bureaucratic red tape, and that we'd be swimming by Memorial Day. The construction began in late November for 3 months. Our backyard resembled a war zone. The constant rumble of machinery became the soundtrack to our daily lives. Cement mixers arrived at dawn, their rotating drums catching the early morning light as they prepared to pour the foundation of our dreams. I remember the day they installed the pool shell, a magnificent kidney-shaped basin that gleamed like a sapphire jewel in our transformed backyard. Emma ran circles around the perimeter, her arms spread wide like an airplane, already imagining herself doing cannonballs off the diving board. Jake practiced his swimming strokes in the air, his skinny arms cutting through imaginary water. Even Lucy, typically shy about new things, couldn't contain her excitement. Chattering nonstop about pool parties and mermaid games, the installation process was more complex than I'd anticipated. First came the plumbing, an intricate network of PVC pipes that would circulate and filter thousands of gallons of water. Then the electrical work for the underwater lighting system, the pool heater, and the automated cleaning system. The tile work alone took 2 weeks, with skilled craftsmen carefully placing each ceramic square to create a stunning mosaic pattern that Sarah had selected from dozens of samples. By March, we had what appeared to be a completed pool. The water was crystal clear. The LED lighting system created an ethereal glow in the evenings, and the adjacent hot tub bubbled invitingly. We hosted a small celebration dinner on our new patio furniture, toasting to our successful project with glasses of champagne while the kids took their first official swim. But our celebration was premature. 3 weeks later, a stern-faced woman in a navy blue blazer appeared at our front door, clipboard in hand, and a look of barely contained irritation etched across her features. She introduced herself as Janet Morrison from the City Planning and Zoning Department. "Mr. Thompson," she said, her voice carrying the weight of municipal authority, "I'm here regarding the swimming pool installation at this address. We've had reports of unpermitted construction, and I need to inspect your property." My heart began to race. Unpermitted? Let me get the paperwork. I frantically searched through our home office, pulling out the thick folder labeled Pool Project that contained contracts, receipts, and what I believed were all the necessary permits. Janet reviewed each document with the methodical precision of someone who'd done this thousands of times before. "Sir," she said, after what felt like an eternity, "what you have here is a basic excavation permit and a plumbing permit. You're missing the primary construction permit, the electrical permit, the setback variance permit, and the environmental impact assessment." The words hit me like physical blows. But Marcus said, ... He told us everything was handled. We paid him an additional $3,000 specifically for permit fees. Janet's expression softened slightly, the look of someone who'd delivered bad news to countless homeowners. "Mr. Thompson, I'm afraid you've been misled. Your contractor appears to have cut corners on the permitting process. This pool is in violation of several city codes." What followed was a bureaucratic nightmare that would have made Kafka himself weep with recognition. The city issued an order, though the pool was already complete. They demanded a full engineering survey to ensure the pool met safety standards. They required soil stability tests, despite the fact that the pool had been functioning perfectly for weeks. Most crushing of all, they informed us that our pool encroached on the mandatory setback distance from our property line by exactly 14 inches. 14 inches, I repeated to Sarah that night as we sat in our darkened kitchen. The cheerful glow of the pool lights visible through the window, a mocking reminder of our predicament. Our entire financial future is being destroyed. Over 14 inches, the city's solution was characteristically bureaucratic in its inflexibility. We could either demolish the pool entirely and start over with proper permits, or we could apply for a variance to allow the pool to remain in its current location. The variance process would take minimum 6 months and cost $15,000 in administrative fees, with no guarantee of approval. But here's where the story takes its first cruel twist. While we navigated this bureaucratic maze, the city continued to fine us for having an unpermitted structure on our property. $500 per day, every single day, accumulating like compound interest on a debt we never asked for. "It's not our fault your contractor didn't pull the proper permits," Janet explained during one of our many visits to City Hall. "The law is clear and permitted structures are subject to daily fines until they're brought into compliance or removed." I tried explaining our position to anyone who would listen. We'd acted in good faith. We'd hired a licensed contractor. We'd paid for permits. How could we be held responsible for another person's negligence? "Take it up with your contractor," was the consistent response. "This is a civil matter between you and Sunset Pools." But Marcus Webb and Sunset Pools had vanished like desert mirages. Their phone numbers were disconnected. Their office space was empty, with a for lease sign hanging crookedly in the window. Their website had been taken down. Even their Better Business Bureau listing had mysteriously disappeared. It was as if they'd never existed, leaving behind only the evidence of their work and our mounting legal troubles. The fines accumulated with mathematical precision: $500 per day, $3,500 per week, $15,000 per month. By the time summer arrived, we owed the city more than $75,000 in penalties. Our dream pool had become a financial weapon pointed directly at our family's stability. Sarah took a second job tutoring students after school. I started working weekends doing freelance engineering projects. We canceled our family vacation, cut our grocery budget to the bone, and stopped eating out entirely. The kids, sensing the tension but not understanding its source, became quieter around the house. Emma stopped inviting friends over for pool parties. Jake's swimming lessons were canceled. Lucy asked repeatedly why Mommy and Daddy seemed so sad all the time. The irony was suffocating. We had a beautiful, functional pool that brought us no joy. Every time I looked at it, I saw $500 worth of municipal fines accumulating with each passing day. The pool had become a monument to bureaucratic indifference and contractor fraud. Its sparkling water reflecting not summer fun, but financial ruin. Sleep became elusive. I'd lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, calculating and recalculating our options. Sell the house. We'd lose money on a forced sale, and any disclosure of the permit violations would scare away buyers or severely depress the price, declare bankruptcy. The fines were civil penalties, not dischargeable debt. Take out a massive loan to pay the fines and variance fees. We'd already leveraged our home's equity to pay for the pool construction. The stress began. Affecting my work performance, my supervisor noticed my distraction during important meetings. Sarah developed stress-related migraines that left her bedridden for days at a time. Our marriage, strong for 15 years, began showing cracks under the relentless financial pressure. By August, the daily fines had exceeded $100,000. We received an official notice that the city was placing a lien on our property. If we didn't resolve the matter within 60 days, they would begin foreclosure proceedings to collect the outstanding fines. That's when something inside me snapped. I'd spent my entire adult life playing by the rules, following procedures, trusting the system. The first thing I did was call my brother-in-law, Danny, who owned a demolition company in Tucson. Danny was the kind of guy who asked questions later and showed up with heavy equipment, first exactly what I needed for what I was planning. You want to do what? Danny's voice crackled through my phone speaker as I sat in my garage at 6 a.m., sketching out my plan on the back of an old electric bill. I want to document every single piece of this pool coming apart. Danny, I want it. Filmed, photographed, and broadcast to the world. I want those bureaucrats to watch their precious violation disappear in the most public way possible. There was a long pause. Mike, are you having some kind of breakdown, Sarah? Know about this. I hadn't told Sarah yet. She'd left early for a parent-teacher conference, and the kids were still asleep. This was my decision, my line in the sand, and I wasn't going to let anyone talk me out of it. Danny, in 3 days, I'm going to have accumulated $101,500 in fines for a pool that I legally cannot use, cannot enjoy, and cannot keep. The city wants compliance. I'm going to give them compliance they'll never forget. What I didn't tell Danny, what I hadn't told anyone, was that I'd been secretly documenting everything. Every conversation with city officials, every phone call, every piece of correspondence. Arizona is a one-party consent state, meaning I could legally record conversations without the other party's knowledge. Over the past 6 months, I'd amassed nearly 40 hours of audio recordings that painted a damning picture of municipal incompetence, contractor fraud, and bureaucratic cruelty. My plan wasn't just about dismantling a pool. It was about exposing a system that crushed ordinary citizens under the weight of arbitrary rules and punitive enforcement. I was going to turn my backyard into a stage, and the city officials into unwilling performers in a drama. They'd never forget the first step was going viral. Spent the next 2 days creating what would become the most watched municipal protest video in Arizona history. Using my engineering background, I designed a systematic deconstruction plan that would be both structurally sound and visually spectacular. But the real genius, if I do say so myself, was in the storytelling. I created social media accounts on every platform: TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. The username was consistent across all platforms, @PoolJusticePhoenix. My first video was simple: me standing next to the pool, holding the fine notice, explaining the situation in clear, concise terms. My name is Mike Thompson. 6 months ago, I hired a licensed contractor to build this pool. I paid for permits. I followed the rules. The contractor lied, disappeared, and left me holding the bag. The city is now fining me $500 per day, every single day for an honest mistake that wasn't my fault. Today, that fine reached $101,500. Tomorrow, I'm solving their problem permanently. The video was 3 minutes long. I posted it at 8 p.m. on a Tuesday night. By Wednesday morning, it had 50,000 views. By noon, it had 200,000. Local news stations started calling. That's when Janet Morrison from the city called me directly. Mr. Thompson, I understand you're planning some kind of publicity stunt regarding your pool situation. Not a stunt, Janet. A solution? You want the unpermitted structure gone. I'm removing it permanently. Problem solved. Sir, you can't just... You need demolition permits, environmental impact assessments, waste disposal authorizations. I interrupted her. Janet, I'm dismantling my own property on my own land to comply with your demands. I've checked the city code. As long as I'm not using explosives or creating environmental hazards, I can remove structures from my property without additional permits, especially unpermitted structures that you're fining me for every day. The silence on the other end was deafening. Finally, Mr. Thompson, I strongly advise you to reconsider this course of action. The time for reconsideration was 6 months. Ego, when I offered to work with you on a reasonable solution. See you tomorrow, Janet. I hung up and immediately posted the conversation legally recorded, naturally to all my social media accounts. The response was explosive.hashpool. Justice Phoenix began trending locally, then regionally, then nationally. People shared stories of their own bureaucratic nightmares. Local contractors warned others about sunset pools. News stations picked up the story. By Wednesday evening, I had over 300,000 followers. Across all platforms, Sarah came home that night to find our driveway crowded with news vans. "Michael Joseph Thompson," she said, using my full name in that tone. That meant I was either in the deepest trouble of my life or about to become a hero. "What have you done?" I showed her the social media response, the news coverage, the messages of support pouring in from across the country. Then I played her the recorded conversations with city officials, hours of bureaucratic double talk, contradictory requirements, and casual dismissal of our legitimate concerns. They don't care about us, Sarah. We're just revenue generators to them. But tomorrow, I'm going to show them what happens when you push people too far. Sarah listened to everything. She read the supportive messages. She watched the news coverage. Finally, she looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before, part pride, part terror, part fierce determination. "What do you need me to do?" Thursday. Morning arrived with the energy of a small festival. Danny showed up at dawn with a crew of 6 guys and enough equipment to demolish a small building. But they weren't the only ones there. By 7 a.m., our quiet suburban street looked like the site of a major news event. 12 news trucks lined the curb. Neighbors emerged from their houses with coffee mugs and lawn chairs, settling in for what everyone sensed would be an unprecedented show. Someone had set up a food truck at the end of the block, entrepreneurial Arizona at its finest. The crowd kept growing. Word had spread through social media that the dismantling would begin at 10 a.m. sharp. People drove from across the Phoenix metropolitan area to witness what local news had dubbed the Great Pool Protest of 2025. At 9:30 a.m., 3 city vehicles pulled up. Janet Morrison emerged from the first one, accompanied by 2 other officials I didn't recognize and a uniformed police officer. They approached me where I stood next to the pool, now wearing a hard hat and safety vest for the cameras. "Mr. Thompson," Janet called out, "I have an injunction here ordering you to cease and desist this demolition." I smiled and held up my own set of papers. "And I have a legal opinion from 3 different attorneys confirming my right to remove unpermitted structures from my own property to comply with city demands. I also have audio recordings of city officials repeatedly telling me that this pool must be removed or modified to achieve compliance." The crowd, now numbering in the hundreds, erupted in cheers. Someone had brought a portable speaker system, and my voice carried clearly across the gathering. "Janet," I continued, "you've fined me over $100,000 for having this pool. I'm solving your problem, unless you'd prefer to waive all fines and approve a variance for 14 inches. The local news cameras captured Janet's expression perfectly, the look of someone who suddenly realized they'd walked into a very public trap. "The city's position is the city's position," I interrupted, "has been clear for 6 months. Remove the pool or face escalating fines. I choose removal." At exactly 10 a.m., I raised my hand to signal Danny's crew. The crowd fell silent. Even the news reporters stopped talking, sensing the gravity of the moment. "This is for every homeowner who's been crushed by bureaucratic indifference," I announced. "This is for everyone who's been lied to by contractors and abandoned by the system that's supposed to protect them. This is for the principle that government should serve people, not the other way around." I picked up a sledgehammer, a purely symbolic gesture. Since Danny's crew would do the actual technical work, and struck the first blow against the pool's decorative tile edge. The crowd exploded in cheers. Car horns honked from the street. Someone started chanting, "Pool justice, pool justice." And within minutes, the entire crowd had taken up the cry. But here's where the story takes its most unexpected twist. As Danny's crew began the systematic dismantling, starting with the tile, then the pool equipment, then the decking, something extraordinary happened. People in the crowd started sharing their own stories of municipal overreach, contractor fraud, and bureaucratic nightmares. A local TV reporter, initially there just to cover a quirky protest story, realized she was witnessing something much larger. Mrs. Chen, from 3 streets over, told the cameras about the $30,000 in fines she'd received for a fence that was allegedly 6 inches too tall. Bob Martinez shared how the city had condemned his home-based auto repair shop after 20 years of operation because of a zoning change he'd never been notified about. The Rodriguez family described their 2-year battle with the city over a shed that violated setback requirements by less than a foot by noon. What had started as my personal protest had transformed into a community-wide expose of systemic problems. The hashtag bureaucratic abuse began trending nationally. News crews from Phoenix, Tucson, And even Los Angeles set up permanent positions on our street, and through it all, Danny's crew methodically dismantled the pool with the precision of surgeons. Every piece was catalogued, photographed, and carefully removed. The underground plumbing was capped properly. The electrical systems were safely disconnected. The concrete was broken into manageable pieces and loaded onto trucks. Janet Morrison and her